Also carefully closed the door to the bedroom where Alex was sleeping. He picked Zoe up and carried her downstairs. After a passionate kiss, also put Zoe on the floor on all fours, walked around her from behind, and roughly inserted his. The Chicago summer heat clung to the city, heavy and electric. Zoe sat on the patio behind their small brick house, a cold drink sweating in her hand, her sundress sticking lightly to her skin. Across from her, Orso leaned back in his chair, his powerful frame relaxed, the muscles in his arms shifting under his fitted t-shirt with every small movement. Alex, her husband, had wandered inside to grab another beer. Zoe barely noticed. Her eyes were on Orso. He laughed at something she said, a deep rumbling sound that settled low in her stomach, and leaned closer, the sharp gleam of amusement in his dark eyes making her catch her breath. His body radiated confidence, strength, something raw and real that Alex hadn't shown her in a long time. The door creaked, and Alex returned, handing Orso a beer before dropping into his chair with a groan. His stomach strained against his shirt, his movements slow and heavy. Zoe tried not to compare them, but the contrast between the two men was blinding. Orso's gaze flicked to her again, lingering just a second too long. She saw it. The question in his eyes, the awareness. Her heart raced. The evening stretched on, conversations blurring around them. At some point, Alex stumbled off to bed, muttering something about being exhausted. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, the air shifted. Zoe and Orso sat in the thick, heavy silence, the buzz of distant traffic and the hum of crickets filling the space between them. Orso set his beer down carefully. He stood and walked around the table to her side. His hand brushed her shoulder lightly, his fingers grazing her skin with a deliberate slowness that made her shiver. "You look too good to be sitting here all alone," he murmured, his voice low and steady. Zoe didn't move away. She tilted her chin up, meeting his gaze fully, her body aching with anticipation she couldn't hide anymore. Orso's hand slid from her shoulder to the curve of her neck, his thumb tracing along her jawline. For a moment, the world stood still. Then he kissed her. The first touch of his mouth on hers was hot, commanding, a promise of everything she had been craving. Zoe let out a soft, broken sound and reached for him, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. Orso groaned against her mouth, his hands finding her waist, gripping her with a strength that made her gasp. He lifted her easily from the chair, carrying her through the sliding door into the living room, moving with a surety that left her trembling with excitement. He pressed her against the wall, his body hard and hot against hers, his mouth devouring hers in deep, hungry kisses. Zoe clung to him, her body alive with the thrill of it, the thrill of doing something forbidden, something she shouldn't want but couldn't stop herself from craving. Orso's hands roamed her body with bold, confident strokes, mapping every curve, every shiver. His touch wasn't tentative like Alex's had become. It was certain, knowing exactly how to pull desperate moans from her throat. He pulled her dress up, his fingers grazing the bare skin of her thighs, her hips. Zoe gasped into his mouth, her nails dragging down his back, needing more, needing him to strip away the last of her control. Orso lifted her again, carrying her easily to the couch, laying her down and following her without hesitation. His weight, his heat, the scent of his skin. It wrapped around her, drowning out every thought except him, his hands, his mouth, the way he made her feel. Zoe surrendered completely, her body moving with his, every kiss, every touch setting her on fire. She didn't care about guilt. She didn't care about right or wrong. She cared about how alive she felt. How good it felt to be wanted like this. How much she had missed this wild, reckless part of herself. And as Orso's mouth found hers again, rough and demanding, Zoe knew there was no going back. Orso didn't give her time to think, and Zoe didn't want to. His hands slid under her dress, gripping her thighs, pulling her closer. His body pressed into hers with a weight and heat that made her head spin. Every touch was firm, sure, reminding her how long it had been since anyone had handled her like this, with hunger, with need, without hesitation. She arched into him, her breath catching in her throat as he kissed a path down her neck, slow and possessive. His stubble scraped her sensitive skin, sending shivers racing through her. She tugged at his shirt, desperate to feel more of him, the solid muscles shifting under her hands, nothing soft or uncertain about him. Orso growled low in his chest, the sound vibrating against her skin, and pulled his shirt over his head in one fluid motion. Zoe's hands roamed his body, feeling the tight stretch of muscle over bone, the strength he carried so easily. It made her ache, made her reckless. He caught her wrists and pinned them above her head, his mouth finding hers again in a kiss so deep it stole her breath. She gasped against him, her body reacting in waves, caught between resistance and irresistible pull. Zoe's dress crept higher, gathering like spilled silk at her waist, revealing the softness of her legs to his bold, exploring touch. His hands traced her with quiet reverence, moving slowly, deliberately. A painter studying his canvas. Every brush of his fingertips left her breathless, aching for the next stroke. She arched into him instinctively, offering herself like an open flame yearning for the match. Orso leaned in, pressing the weight of his presence against hers, and Zoe let out a sound that was part sigh, part plea, her fingers curling tightly into his shoulders. He wasn't like Alex. No hesitation, no careful steps. Orso moved with the certainty of a storm, claiming space without apology. And she melted into it. She tilted her head back, baring the vulnerable line of her neck, inviting the warmth of his lips, the scrape of his teeth, the wet flick of his tongue as he memorized the terrain of her skin. Each kiss drew a shiver from her spine, pulling her further from the world she knew, and deeper into a place where nothing mattered except this dizzying now. Her dress slipped away, discarded like a secret no longer needed, and his gaze roamed across her like fire through dry grass. His hands followed, patient, relentless, tracing each curve, pausing at every place that made her gasp. "You're breathtaking," he whispered, his voice roughened by want. Zoe reached for him, hungry, pulling him down like a crashing wave. His kiss was wild, full of teeth and need, and his hands were everywhere, creating heat, unraveling thought, leaving her undone. When he finally moved with her, not gently, but like answering a call that had echoed for too long, she cried out, clutching at him, her whole being lifting to meet him in a frantic, wordless chorus. It was raw, fierce, a rhythm born of instinct and longing. Every movement sent her spiraling higher. Every press of lips and bodies made her forget everything but this wild dance. She wrapped herself around him, grounding them in the chaos, meeting every surge with her own, the sound of their bodies becoming the only music in the room. Zoe let herself drown in it. In him, in the freedom of finally choosing what she desired without guilt, without second thoughts. The world fell away. There was no past, no shame, only fire, only the beautiful, reckless ache of surrender. Orso's hands gripped her thighs tighter, his pace quickening, his mouth finding hers in another deep, consuming kiss. Zoe's body tightened, the pleasure building faster and harder until it exploded through her, leaving her gasping his name, trembling in his arms. He followed her moments later, his body shuddering against hers, his breath ragged in her ear. They collapsed together on the couch, slick with sweat, tangled in each other, the heavy scent of sex and heat filling the room. Orso buried his face in her neck, his arms still locked around her, like he couldn't bear to let her go. And Zoe wrapped up in him, smiling against his skin, felt more alive, more powerful, more satisfied than she ever had before. She had crossed the line, and she loved every second of it. The room was still heavy with the scent of them, the air thick and warm. Zoe lay against Orso's chest, her fingers tracing slow, lazy circles across his skin. His breathing was deep and steady under her ear, his arms still wrapped tightly around her like he didn't plan to let her go. She didn't want him to. The guilt she had expected never came, only a deep, thrumming satisfaction that spread through every inch of her body. Zoe closed her eyes, letting the feeling settle in her chest. The knowledge that she had taken what she wanted without apology, that she had tasted something real, something she couldn't pretend to forget. Orso shifted under her, brushing a hand slowly down her back, pulling her even closer. His lips pressed against her temple, a slow, lingering kiss that made her toes curl. "You're dangerous," he muttered against her hair, a low laugh rumbling from his chest. Zoe smiled against his skin, the corner of her mouth curving in a slow, satisfied grin. She tilted her head up to look at him, their eyes locking, and for a long, heated moment, neither of them said a word. There was no shame between them, only a raw, electric understanding. Orso's fingers trailed down her side, slow and deliberate, setting off fresh sparks along her skin. She arched into his touch without hesitation, hungry for more of him, more of this feeling she never wanted to lose. He rolled them over effortlessly, pinning her beneath him once more. His body was heavy, solid, grounding her, anchoring her in this new reality where nothing existed except the two of them. He brushed his nose against hers, his breath hot and uneven. "You sure you know what you're doing?" he asked, his voice rough with restraint. Zoe reached up and cupped his face in her hands, pulling him down into a kiss that left no doubt. She kissed him hard, pouring all the wildness, the freedom, the fierce new desire she felt straight into him. His body answered immediately, pressing into her, his hands sliding down to grip her hips with a strength that made her gasp against his mouth. They moved together again, slower this time, deeper, more deliberate. Every touch, every kiss, every slow grind of his body against hers was a claim, a promise that this was no accident, no regret. It was exactly what she wanted, exactly what she needed. The tension built between them again, slow and sweet and unbearable. Zoe clutched at him, her nails raking lightly down his back, pulling him closer, deeper, chasing the edge with reckless abandon. When they finally came apart together, it was explosive, a shuddering, breathless fall that left them clinging to each other, shaking with the force of it. Orso pressed his forehead to hers, their breathing ragged, their bodies slick with sweat and satisfaction. He kissed her again, softer now, like sealing a secret between them. The sounds of the city filtered in through the cracked window. Distant car horns, the low hum of voices. Life outside moved on, but here in this small, hidden world they had created, time stood still. Eventually, Orso pulled her fully into his arms, wrapping her up tightly against him. Zoe curled into him, her body fitting against his perfectly, her heart beating a steady, content rhythm in her chest. She smiled to herself, a slow, wicked smile, as she pressed a kiss to his shoulder. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't weakness. This was freedom. And she had no intention of giving it up. Tomorrow the world might ask for explanations. Tomorrow Alex might notice what he had lost. Tomorrow might be messy, complicated, full of consequences. But tonight, Zoe belonged here, in Orso's arms, in the fire they had created, in the wild, beautiful truth of wanting something and taking it. No apologies, no regrets, only the sweet, unstoppable rush of finally choosing herself. And as Orso's hand slid up her back, pulling her closer still, Zoe closed her eyes and let herself fall deeper into the heat, the hunger, the reckless, perfect love she had found in the last place she ever expected.